Welcome to a Tuesday. It's Ivy Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. Man, we have got so much stuff we're going to talk about today. We are now Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days away, Jesse, from a home Notre Dame football playoff game. How fired up are you?
I'm pretty fired up. It's been annoying getting my PTO approved, but I think I have a half day on Friday, so that should be plenty of time. The issue is at this new place, all of our sick and vacation is lumped into a one-time allotment. And
yeah. You've explained this.
Vacation.
People know what PTO is.
But I've used up all of my prorated PTO for the holidays, and which wasn't very much. So getting the day off was a task, but I think I have it off.
All right. So you're not coming into town as early as you thought you were coming into town then? Is that correct?
Either Thursday or Wednesday night. Probably Thursday night.
You're kind of crackling a little bit as soon as we started the show. The internet connection looks fine, but your microphone is kind of crackling a little bit. Like when you talk, it's doing the kind of intermittent sputtering. Can you hear it?
Nope.
All right, then. Well, we got, like I said, we got a lot that we're going to get to today. We'll see how things go with Jesse. His technology has not wanted to cooperate with us the last couple of weeks. So hopefully it goes better as this show goes on. We had the chance to speak with Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bevacqua today. He touched on a lot of different topics, and we're going to hear from him on this show. We've also got some comments from Marcus Freeman on this show, some whiteboard from Jesse on this show as well on Indiana. One thing a lot of people have wanted to know for a while is what's the vibe of this game on Friday going to be? It's at Notre Dame Stadium. Is this a Notre Dame home game? Is this, more like a neutral site game since it's a playoff game, or is it, a true home game for the Fighting Irish? And I asked Bevacqua that.
100%. I mean, and, the CFP, to their credit, I'm part of the CFP, we're clear about that. Hey, Notre Dame, hey, other teams that are going to host a game, you've earned this. You've earned the ability to host a game, particularly in our spot, not being in a conference and being independent, which is something we're tremendously proud of. This is the biggest thing we can do at this point, is host a game. That's our goal. We can't get a bye, and that makes sense, with the way things are situated.
So, he detailed this in some other comments as well. It's going to be a Notre Dame home game. There's going to be a big student section there. Indiana will get its ticket allotment, just like any visiting team gets. And obviously, fans of Indiana will also, be able to go out there on the secondary market and potentially buy tickets. So we'll see what that looks like. But for all intents and purposes, you don't have to fret. It is a Notre Dame playoff game. And when you get to your seat out there, Jesse and everyone else, you will get one of these here rally towels that they gave us at the end of the press conference today. Get loud, Irish fans. A yellow rally towel will be on your seat Saturday night. I don't know how warm it'll keep your seat, but warm it, wave it around, do your rally wave. Keep yourself warm. Does that make you feel better to hear that this is in fact, considered basically a Notre Dame playoff or, home game, and they're not going to try to kind of sterilize the environment, water it down as a neutral site type game?
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even know that was something on the table, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be, that was the whole point of Notre Dame hosting the game, is getting that predominant, home field advantage. And so obviously I like the fact I was curious what they were going to do in terms of, towels or jerseys or, all of the above. And so I like that they're adding towels. I think that obviously gets more fan interactions, fans love, something that they can, cheer louder with, essentially, at the end of the day. So to me, the bigger question is this more indicative of what they're going to wear jersey wise? Because I thought if they did like a green out, they'd pass out green towels. If they did a white out, they'd wear their white uniform. So I'm just curious, does this have any implications on, what jerseys they might be wearing.
Yeah. You might need to unplug those earbuds and see if that fixes your microphone issues. Because there he goes. Jesse is checking out. Hopefully, he will be back soon. We're going to talk more about the jerseys, and Connor is talking about, that's exactly what it is at this point, Connor. Rumor, I don't know how much there is to this black jersey thing. I'm not too thrilled about the prospect of black jerseys for a Notre Dame home playoff game. We'll see. We'll talk more about that in rapid fire as well, just in terms of what it might look like and all that kind of stuff. USMA asking, we were talking about my YouTube live chat yesterday. I can't check it out until Sunday, USMA, because this happens while I'm watching the NFL Sunday Ticket, and I can't watch because it's not actually YouTube TV. It's just Sunday Ticket is through YouTube. So I haven't had a chance to, I can't check it out again and put it up on the screen until there's actually a game on Sunday. So have not been able to do that. We'll see how it goes this weekend. I do have another women's basketball game Sunday, but then after I get back, I'll settle in and hopefully watch a little bit of football and, see how that goes and everything else. So haven't been able to do that yet, but also kind of on the home game front, like we were just talking about, Joe asking, do I think the Knights of Columbus will still have their steak sandwiches Friday? He said his son can't stop thinking about getting one. I would think that they would. I mean, it's a home game. It's going to be like campus, everything else. And, like the students are still going to be there. They're still going to have the dorms open and all that kind of stuff for the students to stay in. And Pete Bevacqua was saying today, there's going to be a pretty good sized student section. They're only, students are getting their tickets for $25. Think about that, Jess. Like, does that make you jealous that you're not a Notre Dame student? You could have only had to pay $25 to get a ticket to this game.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. But I also am glad I got my ticket for the price that I did at the end.
Still got it at a good price. That's right.
Yeah, compared to others. So I've seen that price has come down, which I think it naturally would, just based off of you have to get it sold before the actual game time. But I mean, when that matchup was first announced, I mean, I was seeing tickets, for like $1,300, and that was at like the very top. So I can only imagine what some of those, down front and center seats were going for.
Yeah. But Joe, I would think that they're going to have the Knights of Columbus will still be doing their thing. Have you ever had one of those Knights of Columbus steak sandwiches, Jesse? They are delicious. It's been a long time since I've had one though.
I can't remember the last time I've had one, or if I have had one, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, they sell them out of the Knights of Columbus. They're by one of the residence halls. Joe, do you remember which hall that it's in, or does anybody else know off the top of your head which hall they do the steak sandwiches? I might have to see if I can slide over there before the game and get a little December Knights of Columbus steak sandwich. They're fantastic. They grill up the steak, right there on the grill, sizzling hot, on the bun and the whole thing. Oh man, I'm getting kind of excited just thinking about that right now. Joe doesn't remember. Come on, Joe. Congratulations, though, Joe. I saw Joe. I mean, I knew that Joe was going to be there, and this weekend is his birthday. His wife surprised him with tickets. I mean, that's like the ultimate excuse, because you said that, the in-laws were not happy because you're doing in-law Christmas this weekend. And the in-laws weren't happy about you not being there, but it's a perfect excuse. Your wife bought you the tickets. Get up and go. USMA says it's across from the South Dining Hall. Okay. That sounds right. Like right across.
So I kind of left talking about the rally towels and, this being a home environment for Notre Dame and, all of these things. Really, to me, all that matters is that Notre Dame fans are there in abundance, obviously majority control of the stadium. And honestly, it's going to be cold. It's going to be, conditions are going to be what they are. And to me, that's just the perfect excuse to, stay standing the whole game, be loud the whole game, just be engaged ultimately. But the thing I'm kind of leading to is I've seen all these conspiracies about Notre Dame's going to wear all black or, some sort of combination of uniforms that they haven't worn before. How do you see them doing something like that? Or do you think it's either all green or their typical home jersey?
Let's save that for rapid fire, because I don't know if you had a chance to look at the questions today, but that is one of our rapid fire questions. We're going to go deep on the jerseys. I'm going to throw a flag on you if you bring up the uniforms again before that.
That's at the very end. It's like the very last question.
Yes, I've got my rally towel right here, and someone was saying, like, is this the color of the shirts? I think that the color, this is a little bit more gold, I think, like a darker shade of gold than the shirts. I'm going to be curious to see, like, are people buying extra large shirts and stuff like that, green and stretching them out over their coats? What are you going to do? Like, do you have it in, like any green you'll be able to wear on the outside?
I do have some green. I still haven't configured my I guess game day outfit. It's just going to be a matter of two things: how cold it is, and how thick my other jacket is going to be before I enter the game. So I don't know if that means I'll get down to maybe like a sweatshirt with a t-shirt over the top.
You're saying you're going to be sweating when it's 25 degrees outside?
No.
Is
I'm
that what
saying
you're telling me right now?
There's another jacket that will be added before game time, and I just don't know how thick that jacket is going to be. So, maybe I'll need a full-on zip-up jacket. Maybe I can get away with like a quarter zip, a sweatshirt, and a t-shirt over top. I'm not sure yet, but I will be prepared for all scenarios.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, let's talk about the opponent a little bit. What do you say? Little IU?
I think, yeah. I mean, last week we got into IU offense.
Right.
So I guess that means naturally
little defense.
This week,
little defense today.
A little bit of IU defense, and spend some time watching some film. Did some deep dive on the defensive coordinator background, who he is, what he likes to do. So I think I have a pretty good understanding of who IU is and what they want to do defensively.
All right, that's good. That's good, because you carried out the assignment, because that's what we're talking about here today. We will have more Pete Bevacqua comments, by the way, in rapid fire on Marcus Freeman's contract extension. He talked a lot about that at his press conference today. So we'll be starting rapid fire with that. And again, rally towel, get your rally towel and a steak sandwich. If anyone, is from the Knights of Columbus, what's that? Go ahead.
I said, are you extra excited about that rally towel because you don't usually get one in the press box?
Yeah, I don't get freebies very often. So sat across from Chuck Freebie today, and we both got a freebie rally towel after the press conference, and others did as well. They had a whole stack of them they were handing out. So it's pretty cool. Nice little souvenir from the first ever college football playoff home game. So pretty good deal. I think the last time we got anything in the press box was maybe the second year of the new press box, because it faces west into the sun for those afternoon games. And they gave us all a pair of sunglasses one year, since we had to stare into the sun the whole time. So I think that's one of the last ones. Nice little, I think those were from Under Armour as well, if I remember right. Well, here's Marcus Freeman talking a little bit about IU's defense that Notre Dame will face Friday. I almost said Saturday, Friday night.
Yeah, they do some unique things with their D-line, with their second-level defense in terms of pressure package, but also some different stunts that you don't see every week. What we can't do is try to play football. You hear me say it all the time, and make sure, hey, we're scheming everything up the exact right way. Part of this is you got to be aggressive. You got to establish a new line of scrimmage when you're running the football. And that's a mindset and a mentality that we have to have, but they've done an excellent job of stopping the run all season long.
can't play football. You heard him talk about it right there. And like when he's typically said that, he's been talking about his defense against, the opposing offense. You can't play football. That's where they got into some trouble against Northern Illinois early in the season. I'll give you one more comment from Marcus Freeman talking specifically about the run defense, and then Jesse's going to break out his whiteboard here.
Again, I think they play aggressively. I often say they create chaos. They have a really unique scheme in terms of some of their twist games and pressure packages, but they're talented and they play hard. Their D-line is really, really good, and it's hard to simulate some of the things they do in practice. But our scout guys have done a good job at trying to give us a really good look, as they've done all year. But they are well coached, they're aggressive, and they're a confident group.
All right, so there you go. You got some comments from Marcus Freeman on the defense and specifically the run defense. Rabid Now Chihuahua. Basically, a little subtle reminder: hit the like button, like crank it out right now. I just saw that the other IB show is over with, so thanks for the reminder for everyone there. Rabid Now Chihuahua. Hit the like button when you're filtering in here tonight. Of course, we do appreciate it. Do you have anything that you want to say, Jess, before you bring in said whiteboard?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have some basic notes. Well, I don't know if they're basic. I got some notes I took here. I think it's important to kind of set the scene here a little bit. Who they are, some terminology, I guess you could say. So, Bryant Haynes is the defensive coordinator for Indiana University. Played linebacker at Ball State University. Came over from James Madison with Cignetti. And also the defensive line coach came over with Cignetti. And I think that's one of the more critical pieces is the defensive coordinator and the defensive line coach staying together. So what does that mean in terms of 4-3 defense? You have 4 down, 3 linebackers, and 4 deep. Their defensive end, weak side defensive end, they call the stud. It's a 70% DN, 30% linebacker. And this is where they believe that, like, this is the guy who's going to make their money, essentially, right? In interviews, Cignetti has referred to, this is usually our all-conference guy, someone we've gotten to be an All-American before. Like, their defense is kind of made up for this stud spot. And so who is the stud in their I
guess that's why they call him the stud, because, he's the stud of the defense, basically, right? Like,
right. And so this guy is going to be the most important player on the field, and that's Mikael Kamara. He is going to play their stud, number 6, weak side defensive end. And to me, their defense starts up front. They have a really solid defensive line. I just mentioned Mikael Kamara. They have CJ West at nose. He's the Kent State transfer. James Carpenter is going to be the strong side tackle. He's from JMU. And then they got Lanell Carr Jr. He is going to be the opposite of the stud, kind of outside linebacker, I guess you could say.
What's the opposite of a stud?
So that makes up their defensive line. And again, that is excuse me, that is the most important part of their defense, I guess you would say. And then kind of getting into what Marcus Freeman was talking about, what they really want to do is manipulate angles. And they like to tie in their back end. And what does that mean when they're trying to tie in their back end? That means they're also going to bring linebackers, corners, and safeties in these blitzes as well. And I sat down and watched this interview with Bryant Haynes, and it gave some good information. He said, it's all about fooling the quarterback, manipulating the defensive line up front. And he likes to have layers to his blitzes. He's not just trying to run down the middle, run right down Broadway. There has to be layers to the blitz. There needs to be wraps, loops, and it's all about the layers and angles. So his blitzes have, again, if something to boil their defensive pressures down into, it's layers and it's angles, right? And so how are they going to bring this pressure? Well, a lot of times, they're rushing more than 4, like 30% of the time. They're dropping and rushing from all over. It's not just, we're going to bring defensive stunts. They're going to bring it from the linebacker level, the corner level. the safety level. They play a base zone defense with usually 2 high safeties, mainly quarters. And I think the number one or the biggest thing or why I'm mentioning that they play zone is even when they blitz, they play a lot of zone off the blitz still. They don't – a lot of teams when they blitz, they're going to play cover 1, meaning 1 high safety, or cover 0, meaning no safeties. They still like to stay in zone. And so what that indicates to me is they don't have a ton of confidence on their back ends per se. They don't really trust their guys to go men on men. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think that's going to be critical against an opponent like Notre Dame, because I think you're going to be forced to play more men because you have to commit a man to Riley Leonard essentially in the box, right? And so I think that's going to be the back and forth game is, are they going to stay in zone and try to basically cover perimeter runs in zone? Or are they going to walk a guy down and have to play more cover 1 or man on the backside?
I mean, but the flip side of that, what you're talking about, like that they would need to play more man, is when you have a mobile running quarterback, zone is the preferred defense anyway, because if you're in man-to-man, you got defensive backs running the other way with their back turned to the quarterback, and it makes it easier. Like the Ravens are getting ready to play the Steelers for the second time. When Lamar Jackson played them the first time, like what Mike Tomlin and that Steelers defense has done to Lamar Jackson is played predominant zone and, basically kept him in check that way. So like, is that it feels like that's a pretty favorable defense when you've got Riley Leonard in the mix. What do you think? Like, how does Notre Dame counter some of that?
Yeah, I think what Notre Dame has to do in order to counter that is you got to hit tight ends over the middle of the field. You got to hit shallow crossing routes over the middle of the field, because if you're playing zone or if you're playing quarters, those safeties and corners are bailing out now. They're taking, a quarter of the field essentially. So what's that leave? That leaves underneath matchups for tight ends, running backs against linebackers, basically dropping into that zone essentially, right? And so I see what you're saying, but then on the flip side, if Notre Dame starts to get on the perimeter, I don't see how you can continuously play with 2 high safeties and play in that zone coverage essentially, right? And I think another thing you can do if you want to play man is you can just play man spy as well and put a spy on Riley Leonard if you have to at the end of the day. I don't know if their linebackers are athletic enough for that, to be honest with you. But they have to worry about stopping the run first and forcing kind of Riley Leonard. I mean, that's every team, forcing Riley Leonard to throw the ball against some layered zone defenses. Because, I mean, ultimately, if I can give you the best comparison to what this defense is trying to do, it's really similar to what Al Golden does, to be honest with you, in terms of how he likes to bring blitzes, how he likes to disguise pressures, how he likes to mix in his linebackers, his safeties, his corners. Like, they're not just blitzing the blitz. There's a layer to it. There's a reasoning to it. They like the angle. They're trying to get a matchup. And so that's, again, the best direct comparison I can give is a lot of the same stunts that Al Golden does. But, I mean, the key difference maker in this game is, you kind of brought it up, can Riley Leonard beat the look that he's given, essentially, right? Can he get into
how
the play that
disciplined
he
is
needs
he?
to?
Is he disciplined enough to hit those short throws and just take what
Pick up
the defense,
4 to 5 yards?
Yeah. And if they're playing 2 high safeties like that, even though maybe that negates some of Riley Leonard's running, like the 2 high safety look also is a preferable look just for like Jadarian Price and for Jeremiah Love to just, eat it at 6 to 7 yards a pop, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big reason, you've seen a lack of, passing in the NFL this year, is a lot of teams are playing more 2 high cover shell. And that's forcing teams to have to run the ball more. And so if you want to make your hay against a defense like this, you have to be able to run between the tackles and pick up 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, essentially, with Price and Love, like you were saying, because they're not going to get out of they're not going to get out of 2 high if you're not running the ball well, right? Because if you're running the ball well, they're going to have to commit an extra defender to the box, and then that means they're going to have to play man on the backside of it at some point. And so that's the part that I'm really curious about. Do they come out and try to play their base defense, or are they already kind of committing another player to the box, knowing how good of a running team and good of a runner Riley Leonard is, right? Like, do they try to get out ahead of it and say, we're willing to maybe compromise a little bit and play, more man on the backside and make Riley Leonard kind of beat us with his arm, essentially?
Yeah. Josh is asking the effectiveness of zone against RPO. Your thoughts on that?
How effective is zone against RPO? So, I mean, that is what we talked about last week was IU running like a spread option offense. And basically that is RPO to a degree. And it's going to get harder because of, you have to commit a man to that underneath route and you have to commit a man to Riley Leonard running. And so like, that's where I'm saying is that safety going to walk down and be more of a single high look? Because if they're going to go too high, you should be able to run and do RPO all day, essentially, right? Because everything underneath should be open. Those quick pass routes that come off of an RPO scheme, those are going to be favorable because all those corners and safeties are bailing into quarters coverage, right? And another thing is those linemen can only block downfield for so long. So the quarterback's got to get the ball out of his hands.
So a couple numbers. Of course, Indiana has the number one rushing defense in the nation. They're only allowing a little under 71 yards per game, while Notre Dame's rushing offense ranks 10th, running for 225 per game. Notable that Ohio State ran the ball for 130 yards against these guys. They have the number 6 scoring offense, allowing 14.6 a game. Northwestern scored 24 against them. Michigan scored 20, and Ohio State, of course, scored 38. So you've kind of given us a lot of, you've given us a lot of good background information. Do you have the board ready to go?
Yeah. So, I mean,
I want to see, I think what we all want to see, like you've talked about it, and because they are so good against the run, like what they're going to do and how Notre Dame can counter that and still be effective running the football. So here we go.
All right. So let me adjust a couple things here real quick.
Okay.
So they're going to play about a 4-3, 4-3 odd. And this is kind of not anti what they used to run, but I mean, last year they were predominantly a 4-2-5 team. So big defensive philosophy change. So let me get this down here a little bit. So all of today's stuff is not premeditated. This is kind of me going on the
fly
here a little bit. So this
while you're doing that, ND Forever 72 says he can't see how they won't add an extra man to the box because Notre Dame lives/thrives off the run game. Have to make Riley beat you through the air, if at all possible.
Yeah, I don't disagree with some of that. 1 second here. Okay.
I mean, they pretty much got to commit to the run, but like, again, part of that.
But if you commit to the run and Riley Leonard makes one guy miss, then you're kind of screwed.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I mean, part of the gambit is Riley Leonard being the X factor because you don't have just one running back in the backfield. You basically have two because you've got Riley Leonard back there as well. So it's not just, like trying to take away Jeremiah Love and or Jadarian Price. It's Riley Leonard as well. And like we've all wished for more 21 or 20 or 22 personnel, whatever it happens to be, but like, oh man, like it just feels like if there's a matchup that you want two running backs and Riley Leonard on the field at the same time, this would be it, don't you think?
Oh, this would 100% be it, and I'm hoping, Mike Denbrock save some of that in the tank this season. You know what I mean? I think that there's certain untapped stuff that as an offensive coordinator, I think you don't put on film, knowing that you always want to kind of, especially for games like this, you just want to present stuff that you haven't put on film yet. And I hope that would mean, more two-back personnel. But I would have to lean against it just because they haven't shown any of it yet.
Right. But like,
so
you do have to, like how the game is going, like if maybe like if they feel like, okay, here's like something, here's a change up we can go to, a different look that we can give them, like maybe it pops up in the middle of the game someplace. I don't know. It's going to be really, I'm really curious. Yes, Brian Sullivan, he asks if we are related. Father, son, we don't just we're not just two dudes who happen to have the same uncommon last name. We're not
depends
Smiths.
on the day.
That's right. Whenever Jesse claims me and whenever I claim him from time to time. All right, so do you have this thing ready to go or what? You've been doing a lot of adjusting here.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that you kind of have to look at is how IU is going to want to bring pressure. A common pressure that I saw from them, again, this is a different way to bring 4 or 5. And again, like I kind of said in the lead up there, they've rushed more than 4 like 30% of the time. That's a really high rate. Mikael Kamara, that stud position guy I mentioned, he at one point led the FBS and quarterback hurries. So he's definitely a handful, right? And so first scheme that you can kind of get into is, okay, let's bring one of these outside, backers essentially, right? So he's this outside backer is going to blitz off the edge. He's going to set the edge here. This defensive tackle or nose is going to fight across face here. And then this defensive end
across
is going to
right guard.
Yeah, across the right guard. And then this defensive end, most of the time Kamara, is going to kind of loop in off of him, right? And so, again, you created a 5-man pressure in a uncommon way, I guess you could say, right? But this is stuff, I don't see this as being uncommon. And I think an advantage that Notre Dame has is they go against Al Golden all fall camp, all spring camp, during practice. Like, these shouldn't be uncommon looks for the Notre Dame offensive line, right? And so what Marcus Freeman is saying, he doesn't want to get caught up in football, meaning that, okay, well, I have this responsibility and this responsibility and that responsibility. I mean, if you're this tackle and you see your guy not rushing the field, someone's got to come to set the edge, right? So kind of look here to the edge and then just see who's coming across your face. Same thing here with the right tackle. Instead of, using your eyes to follow this defensive end around who's looping around, just look at the guy that's fighting across your face. Go ahead and block him. Then if you're the right guard and you notice the guy in front of you is blocking, going the other direction, chances are someone else is coming off of his butt, right? So keep your eyes up and block this guy. Like, that should not be a hard scheme for Notre Dame to block as long as they're just using their eyes and trusting what they're seeing. And so, again, I think that's where Marcus Freeman makes the comment about football is don't get caught up about, oh, well, this guy's here and that guy's like, just use your eyes and kind of communicate with one another, be a synchronized offensive line, and just pass these guys off to each other, right? Like, so if someone's leaving your lane, another guy is likely going to be coming to fill that lane. You know what I mean?
Right. How did I know you watched the Ohio State game specifically? Did they do anything special to counter what they were getting from Indiana defensively?
I wouldn't say that game was a little bit tougher. I watched a lot of the Michigan State game because that was a common opponent, and it's really something that gave Michigan State a lot of fits. They necessarily
but Michigan
didn't
State's
have,
not very good. That's why I
right.
asked about Ohio State.
But the thing was, Michigan State really tried to. The only success they had running the ball was on the perimeter, right? And another thing you have to realize when teams blitz like this is they're also creating lanes for the rusher, right? And so if Notre Dame, if these running backs break the first level, essentially, if they get past these 4 or 5 man rushes, I think you're likely to see them get even more kind of those yard after contact yardage because they're just going to be not as many players at the second level.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of a blitz that you could see from IU. Let me try to undo a little bit of this so we can get into another type of pressure that they like
that's
to
what
do.
I think what most people want to know. And, I think the natural question is, like you're showing us this stuff, how does, what in simple forms, I don't know that it's necessarily a simple answer, but how does Notre Dame beat this?
Yeah, so a lot of what you want to do. Okay, so let's go through that exact kind of blitz play and see if I were Notre Dame, kind of what I would have built for this. So guys coming off the edge, defensive end is looping around. If you're Riley Leonard, you have some sort of probably mesh in here or handoff. If this defensive end crashes down, you're likely not gonna, hand the ball off. If he stays, you are gonna hand the ball off. But I think a big thing in this offense is with a team that likes to create pressures and blitzes, what you have to do off of it is basically fill the area that was blitzed from. And I think that's largely going to be handled by Notre Dame's tight ends in this game, right? So what do I mean by that? Is say this is like Mitchell Evans, Eli Raridan, whoever it might be. If they're going to bring this linebacker off the edge and the tight end can notice that, well, if I'm Notre Dame, I fake the handoff and I leak this tight end right into this flat right here, right? And so, again,
vacated
this is
area.
the vacated area, right? And so if I'm Riley Leonard and I see, this is coming pre-snap, I'll get into a hot play. I'll fake the handoff here. And since this linebacker is leaving, all this tight end has to do is kind of go sit down in this zone because, again, they play a ton of quarters off of their blitzes, right? So if these DBs and safeties are bailing out and they want to still blitz off of that, okay, well, if I'm Notre Dame, I just have these kind of wide receivers, run with them, get them to vacate even more. And then what does that leave? That leads my tight end, somewhere over in the flat underneath. You can also get into a levels concept where even if you fake it here to the running back, he can now get underneath here as well. And so now you've got a levels concept. I can throw it to the tight end or I can throw it, to the running back coming out of the flat off the fake handoff dive. So again, that's underneath and getting into those areas that they're blitzing from is going to be how Notre Dame makes its progress essentially. Right. And so honestly, I think you're going to see a lot of 11 and 12 personnel out of Notre Dame because I think you want to keep these defense or these tight ends attached to the line of scrimmage kind of as much as possible so you can get into a scheme. Here, let me draw
both extra, so like you have an extra blocker at one, but you also have an extra safety. You potentially have a safety valve on each side for what you're just describing right there.
Yeah, someone who can just kind of leak out and find a hole in the zone essentially, right? So let me just kind of delete a couple. And that's why it was hard to kind of have a lot of stuff premeditated for this. Is going to be a lot of like live walkthrough because of what we're kind of there's a lot of variation based off of what IU is going to try to do. So again, say they bring some sort of combination of 5 guys, right? Let me get into, let's say instead this time, basic stunt. These guys are going to come over here. This guy's going to come here, and this guy's going to loop around. Safety's going to bail out, or corner safeties are all going to bail out, right? And so then if I'm Notre Dame, what kind of concept would make sense out of this? I would, if I'm Notre Dame, since they want to run so much zone, I think you have to basically flood an area of the field like this, essentially, right? Like everything's got to stay underneath if these defensive backs and safeties are going to bail out and play so much quarter zone defense, right? And so I think that plays particularly to Riley Leonard's advantage because that means he's got to get the ball out now. And I think he's a better quarterback when he doesn't sit back and try to diagnose defenses from the pocket. I think he's a very quick hitting type of quarterback, right? And so if you see off the handoff that, hey, this isn't here, then all of these underneath routes are going to be there, right? Like that's the advantage of having these double tight ends is you can run these double drag routes, right? Or maybe instead you run, I'm running out of colors here. You run two kind of over drag routes, and then the backside tight end here kind of goes against the grain, and he's going to leak into this empty flat, somewhere over here. And again, this is all because these defensive backs and safeties want to bail out and play such deep cover quarters type defense. So where's Notre Dame going to make a lot of their money? They're going to make a lot of their money on these short underneath routes. And again, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm looking to find tight ends. I'm looking to find Chris Mitchell, looking to find Jordan Faison, basically a guy who can catch the ball over the middle, make one guy miss
out of the slot. Yeah,
make one guy miss and he's gone. Because, like I said, how much they don't play man, I get it that they want to bring pressure and stuff, but the lack of man tells me that you don't believe in your secondary. You're trying to give them extra protection, extra cushion, that sort of thing. So if that's what they want to do, sure, fine. But Notre Dame has to make a living on under 10-yard routes over the middle, flooding a lot of zones, involving their tight ends, involving some of their, I would say, better open space wide receivers, right? Like I'm not asking what's his name? 83 who fumbled against USC on the slant route. Like
Jaden Thomas, yeah.
I'm not asking Jaden Thomas to go over the middle and try to catch a slant and run away from someone. It's just not what it's going to happen, right? So I see a lot of 12 personnel. I see a lot of, Jaden Greathouse, Chris Mitchell, Jordan Faison working out of the slot, quick routes over the middle so they can, essentially just catch the ball and run. Because I can't emphasize it enough, but when the defensive backs and the safeties are bailing out, they're essentially giving you that first 5 to 10 yards here to work with, right? Like you can do whatever you want essentially underneath here in this kind of.
I mean, there's a lot of pitch and catch area right there is all it is where you should see a lot of wide open guys.
And I think that plays so well to Riley Leonard because that to me is that's like RPO one-on-one, right? Like quick over the middle routes. And that gets Riley Leonard to be decisive. And if he doesn't like what he's seeing, then he can just tuck the ball and run essentially. Right. And so that's where I'm curious to see how long they get burned in zone before they walk down one of these safeties and say, you know what? No more. Right. Like you either hand that ball off. If Riley Leonard runs, we got a hat for it. If he doesn't run, then this guy can pick up some of these guys running across the middle.
So have you seen them? Did they, against Ohio State, for example, did they commit an extra hat to the box like you're talking about? Have you seen them come out of zone very much in the games that you've watched?
No, and they don't come out of zone very often. And so if Notre Dame plays how they want to and how they're supposed to, and they come out and run the ball, and they're gashing them for 5-10 yards, they're going to have to get out of zone. And so that's what I'm curious to see is I don't think teams have necessarily rushed on IU quite with much success. And I think Ohio State was kind of the exception there. But what do they do in response if they're getting beat up by the run? Because it's all fine and dandy because they have such a great defensive line. They bring 4 or 5 man pressures and it stopped the run, but they haven't gone against a run attack like they did like they're about to against Notre Dame. And so no one has truly gashed them yet. And so,
I mean, that's the thing. Statistically, this is the best defense they've faced at least since Texas A&M. And from a numbers standpoint, Indiana's numbers stack up better than Texas A&M. But, if we want to go back to the conversation, Texas A&M has played a tougher, schedule than Indiana has played. When you talk about the front seven and, all that different kind of stuff, it just is what it is. So, I mean, I would say Texas A&M and this defense are the two best they've faced, but Indiana from an offensive standpoint, especially from an offensive line standpoint, I think this is probably the best offensive line they faced. It's definitely the best rushing attack that they have faced this season. So it's going to look a lot different for both teams out there. But especially, I think, for Indiana. Again, they're very well coached. They're very technically sound and all that.
Yeah, but how does it go when things are off script for them?
Right. That's exactly right. Because again, like, I don't just expect Notre Dame to come out and just start gashing them from the get-go. I think that there's going to be, kind of
layers,
some feeling out. Yeah. In terms of just exactly how this, whole thing goes. But, like what you're talking about, if they're playing that much zone with the kind of bodies and mismatches that Notre Dame can create, both with the receivers and with the tight ends, not to mention the running backs, if you're essentially talking about 2 or 3 guys, and then maybe they drop a guy off and you get a 4th guy, but like zone blitz type stuff. But if that's what you're doing against Notre Dame's skill personnel, I just feel like there's going to be again a lot of open spaces for Riley Leonard to be able to find some pretty easy pitch and catch type stuff.
Yeah, so I think the only thing that could get Notre Dame into some trouble is if they do start committing an extra player to the box. And the thing is they're not going to pre-snap. They're not going to show that. So that's going to be the hard part for Riley Leonard is I don't think they're going to show pre-snap what's going on. But let's say you get into like a cover 3 invert or a cover three robber. What does that look like? Well, this defensive back is going to take a third. This defensive back is going to take a third. And then what's going to happen
right now?
Yeah, the corners are going to take a third, and then the middle 2 safeties are going to have to when you call, invert or robber. What's going to happen is one of these safeties is going to take the last middle third, and then the remaining safety, since it is zone, is probably going to drop into this middle zone. Linebacker would drop out to this hook, and then this other linebacker would probably drop into this hook, right? And so you've inverted things a little bit, and so if I'm Riley Leonard pre-snap, I'm like, all right, cool. This is 2 high safeties. I'm good. Middle of the field should be open. Oh, crap. They start bringing, some sort of stunt. Things aren't looking good for Notre Dame. Riley Leonard fakes a handoff. He panics. He thinks he's got a tight end sitting down in the middle. Okay, I throw it. Oh, crap. They're not in quarters anymore. This safety is dropped down into the hole and kind of picked up this middle of the field type situation. That's where Riley Leonard has to be careful is pre-snap, what he's seeing pre-snap, and then what he's seeing post-snap, and how are they basically, how are they bringing pressure, and then how are they playing zone on the backside of that? Are they dropping all 4 guys into quarters? Are they inverting and dropping one of these guys into the hole? Because that guy pre-snap, if you don't account for him post-snap, he's going to jump in front of something and it's going to be easy interception, right? Like that's what you got to look for if you're Riley Leonard is – once they start bringing a safety down into the box, how are they doing it? I don't think they're going to show you post or pre-snap that they're going to walk someone down, right? And so maybe if it's this would be really interesting, but it's like if let's say post-snap they get into this cover 3 look and this safety drops to the middle of the field. All right, well maybe if in a passing situation, yes, that's his zone, but if Riley Leonard breaks a run, who's to say this guy doesn't turn into a quarterback spy as well, right? So now you've got him but you got a safety now on both sides, a guy who's faster, more agile than a linebacker, side to side laterally. So again, he's giving, kind of a hiccup, not only in the passing game, but also the rushing game, because he can drop down into this hole. And then off of that can probably play a QB spy as well. So if Riley Leonard decides to take off, likely that's going to be the safety's man as well. So that's just kind of some things to look forward to is how do they start rotating their their secondary around if they want to start committing an extra player to the box and how's that look? What's that look like kind of coming off their pressures as well? But this is a lot of scribbles at this point.
It is a lot of scribbles. I was ready for you, with all these scribbles, like for it to turn into some kind of picture there, when you were all said and done. But
does that make sense though about how, like what they could do with the safety and rolling him down and how that would present difficulties for Riley Leonard? Because in
I
the
think that's
past game,
ultimately going to be the biggest challenge if they are playing zone. How Indiana plays with some stuff, and I would expect them to try to play with some stuff because Leonard has made some mistakes from time to time, and I expect, especially because Curt Cignetti does consider himself such a genius, that
there's no shying away from that.
No, there's not. That he's gonna try to fool with Riley Leonard a little bit Friday night.
It all comes down to their defensive line. That it is the best part of their defense. It makes the linebackers' job easier. It makes the secondary's job easier when they're, clobbering the run, getting pressure on the quarterback. But when those things aren't going well, when IU is off schedule and they have to start doing stuff that they're not accustomed to, how are they going to respond? Because it's not going to be all – well, I guess it could be. And then at that point, we'd be having a different conversation. But I think Notre Dame is going to present some stuff that IU doesn't have answers for. And it's going to be – how do we respond off of that? Because I don't think that's a challenge that they face too much this season.
Right. Because, again, it's going to be 1 day short of 3 full weeks for both teams. And so both teams are going to have a chance to incorporate some things that the other team hasn't seen. I mean, you can pretty much guarantee that. It's going to be a matter of, when, not if, that happens out there Friday night. They're both going to show some things, and typically, like for Notre Dame, like, as it applies to Notre Dame's defense, typically teams do that right away. It's like, again, like you come out, you get on the script, you've got your script put together, and they always kind of show and do some things that Al Golden's defense hasn't seen. Maybe they have some success early on, but then what happens once they get knocked off that script and they kind of, are you going to do that the whole game? If you try to do that the whole game, Al Golden's going to adjust to it. If you go back to your old stuff, Al Golden's going to be ready for it, so that's why I just feel like this game is going to play out, as I've said before, fairly similarly to what we saw against Ohio State. I think it's most likely going to be like a 1-score game in either direction throughout most of the first half. I think it's going to be pretty close. But with 2 well-coached teams, I think that ultimately the more talented team is going to separate themselves.
They should.
As the game wears on. And the more talented team, of course, is Notre Dame. They should. That's exactly right.
I think Irish Eagle 83 makes a great point. Most recent comment in the chat. Need Notre Dame to be to IU what Alabama was to Notre Dame in 2012. And that's exactly it. They need to get into space and then use that space to their advantage. I like Notre Dame's.
Like the same thing. Yeah. And that's what I think we said this last week, where Notre Dame has been exposed. Yeah, where Notre Dame has been exposed in the past when they've gotten to the playoffs against whether it's Alabama or Clemson, was those teams had more playmakers, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball as well. Notre Dame just could not outman those guys, out athlete those guys on the perimeters. But, completely flipped now this time around. Like Notre Dame should have a definite advantage and be able to out athlete Indiana on the perimeters. So I think that's a big difference in this matchup compared to when Notre Dame has been in the playoff in the past. And part of that obviously comes to the fact that it's a 12-team playoff and you've got more teams than, just the cream of the crop up there at the top 4. Real quick, before we move on, I did want to play, kind of speaking of that, here's Marcus Freeman on Kurtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback.
Every great offense is led by a quarterback, and this is no different. He's a veteran. He's been in big games. He's played in a lot of football games, and he makes really good decisions. Like, he knows where he's going with the ball. He knows what he's looking for, and he is able to execute at a high level. But more than that, I think their offense, being able to run the ball, is something that they've done really efficiently. And when you think about weather conditions, you think about a Friday night in South Bend, Indiana, weather could have an impact on the football game. and they've done a really good job running the ball. And so we have to prepare, obviously, for the things he does well in the passing game, but we got to make sure we can stop the run too.
It's the number one pass efficiency offense, Indiana, in the nation, the number one pass efficiency defense, Notre Dame, in the nation in this matchup. Part of what makes him so successful, he completes 70% of his passes this season. He gets it out quick. There are a lot of slants. They don't let him get under a whole lot of pressure. I do think it's interesting, though, that like when you look at Ohio State and Michigan, it was a lot different in those games. He only completed against Ohio State and Michigan, where obviously they went 1-1. 54% of his passes he completed in those two games. Compare that to Charlotte, Western Illinois, and Florida International when he completed 75% of his passes, and he was also sacked 5 times by the Buckeyes, 4 times by Michigan. So, like, your thoughts on Rourke, Jesse, and how you see Notre Dame and Al Golden contending with him?
Yeah, so the slants, the high passing efficiency, the getting the ball out quick, I mean, that all goes back to their spread option offense, their RPO type offense, get the ball out quick. The thing I would tell you, and this, I mean, if you're Notre Dame fans, this could either scare you or to me, it kind of scares me. But to me, Indiana's offense is NIU 2.0. If you look at NIU, what they did against Notre Dame is they ran the ball efficiently on the early downs, and they were really they passed efficiently well on third down or basically when they needed to. And it was anything long. It was, quick slants, basically enough, to pick up the first down, oftentimes 3 or 5 yards. And if I'm not mistaken, and maybe fact check me on this, I think NIU has one of the best passing efficient offenses in the entire country.
It actually statistically, got a very good defense.
I'm pretty sure that's why I knew that stat, is because it's a similar offense, right? It's they want to run, and then they want to set up their pass off of the run, and their pass is going to be just enough to kind of get what they want. They're not trying to hit the home run or they're trying to stay ahead of the chains, pick up first downs, get into manageable third downs. I think that's what you're going to see is if IU can do it right, they want to basically do what NIU did against Notre Dame. And so how do you –
Indiana, though, doesn't run the ball as well as NIU. You know, like Marcus Freeman was talking about that, like running the ball. IU is just a pretty average rushing team. And, combine that with the fact that Rourke is not a runner by any means. He has run for a total of 12 yards this season. Yeah.
So if I'm Notre Dame, what does that look like defensively? Well, the game that comes to mind is, was it 2020 Clemson at home? What are the Clemson games at home? Do you remember when they came out and they thought, quick passes, getting to Notre Dame on the perimeter, all those screens, quick RPO
That was
passes.
2 years ago when Notre Dame just dominated them. Yeah, when they tried to come out and hit the perimeter like that. Notre Dame just suffocated it. They were all over it.
So that's what Notre Dame has to do against Indiana. And if you're looking for a comparison defensively, what that looks like, that's what it's got to be, is you got to have great tackling on the perimeter. You got to have linebackers closing and forcing the play outside. Basically funneling everything to the sideline or back inside to their help, essentially, right? But it comes down to good tackling out of the cornerback position. And I think that's something that we've seen out of Leonard Moore, out of Christian Gray. That also means that your safeties, Schuler and Watts, need to come downhill and fill on those screens, those quick passes. So if I can find a game where it's going to be most resemblant and be NIU this year and then Clemson from 2 years ago, for how teams really are going to try in this spread option offense, how are they going to attack Notre Dame's defense? And that's exactly what Clemson ran. I can't remember because they switched quarterbacks that year. Can't remember exactly who they started with and who they
switched quarterbacks that game.
That game, right. And so like that was the frustration is, in the spread option offense, it's okay, quick handoff. If the handoff's not there, quick pass, because we only have 3 yards. Our offensive lineman can't block downfield. So let's get the ball out quick. And that's what Notre Dame did against Clemson is they just ate that stuff up on the sidelines. They had great tackling, they had support, and they funneled everything to the sideline. And so if I'm Notre Dame, that's defensively kind of what they have to do. Similar game prep or schematic wise as 2022 Clemson.
And like you said, it can scare you if you think about NIU, but Marcus Freeman has talked about it. You remember after that, the NIU coach, talked to Marcus Freeman about some specific things that they saw that they felt like they could take advantage of against Notre Dame. So, I mean, he basically, gave him their scouting report and helped him out after the fact. And, like you definitely saw, you didn't see those things rear their head again. Now, the offense obviously wasn't exactly this, like that they were facing. But like, if that's your comparison, I have to think that, what is this now? 11 games later, Notre Dame has definitely probably gone back and watched some of that. And Marcus Freeman, again, knowing what he learned in that game, I think it's just going to look a lot different this time around.
Well, I agree, and if I'm Notre Dame, I'm licking my chops, to be quite honest with you. I'm daring teams to kind of run this spread option offense because, I mean, look at Notre Dame did against 2022, and I would argue they're far more athletic and more versatile. More their team speed is much greater 2 years than it was in the past, essentially.
And that's
right?
the thing;
so,
their closing speed on that kind of stuff is just
phenomenal.
It's going to be so much different than.
I mean, it's why Army and Navy had
Indiana
no success
has to offer. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
and so I don't know where Indiana gets off on trying to attack the perimeter like that, or these quick passing games, or whatever it might be, because Notre Dame has only proven that they can play well in space and they can shut. I was about to say something else, but they can shut that stuff down very quickly.
I concur. All right, Jesse, great breakdown tonight, as always. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it. I can't believe it's already rapid fire time.
I know. We've got a lot to cover still in rapid fire because we did get to talk with Pete Bevacqua, Notre Dame's athletic director, today. Fielded a few questions, as you could imagine, doing a press conference today about Marcus Freeman's contract extension. I asked him why now was the time to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I wanted to do and have been thinking about all year. He's our coach. I want him, and Notre Dame wants him to be our coach for the foreseeable future. This isn't about any game or any stretch of games. He is the right person to be our head coach for on the field and off the field reasons. So in talking with Marcus and primarily with his agent, Clint Dowdle, I just felt like it made sense. The regular season has ended. Let's get this done before the playoff game. Let's put it to rest. I want it to happen. Notre Dame wants it to happen. Coach Freeman couldn't be more excited about staying at Notre Dame. This looked like the perfect time. And, to do it without it all being a distraction to him, he is 100% focused on Friday night and just wanted to get it done quickly, wanted to get it done in a way that made him happy and made him happy about his staff. Again, I can't stress enough about how many of the conversations with him were about his staff, and obviously in a way that works for Notre Dame. And when two groups want to do something, it's usually easy to figure out.
So what do you think, Jess? We'll hear more about the staff stuff here in a minute. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Bevacqua basically tipped his hand and said, hey, this is a guy we knew we wanted to sign. And it wasn't defined about – we'd already seen enough of what we need to see. It wasn't – we've already made up the decision. And so I think he basically was like, well, we wanted to get this extension done before we go on a 4-game heater here. Now we got to pay Marcus
and then I got to pay even more. Yeah.
Right. And so if you knew you wanted to sign the guy, if he already gave you every indication that you were going to sign the guy, then why not sign him before these big games are played? Because if they go well, and that's what you anticipate, well, you're just going to owe Marcus even more money after that. And so to me, it kind of it dotted the I's and crossed the T's. It kind of checked off the rationale and why they wanted to get this thing done and before, or why this moment made sense for them.
I mean, look, he's been around him long enough. I think he obviously had a really good feel because, he was on the job for almost a full year working along with Jack Swarbrick before he ultimately took over for Jack Swarbrick. So he got to be around Marcus Freeman a lot, and you'll hear some of his thoughts here in a second about some of his observations. He knew that Marcus Freeman was the guy that he wanted to continue to run this. And, Marcus Freeman's got him in the playoffs. So, a little bit of a game of poker in terms of how long you want to wait. Do you just want to get it done? Obviously, they went to work pretty quickly at the end of the season to be able to talk with the agent and really, how much maybe before the end of the season came, was he already talking to hammer out all the, the details on a contract that quickly is pretty impressive. So there was obviously a lot of willingness on both sides, to just get it done, get it locked up. So I think it's good for everybody. Yeah. So Jimmy, I can't answer why Pete was wearing Nikes to the game. I mean, he's the athletic director, and it's his choice. I guess he made a style decision. It is obviously off-brand, so I don't know. It's an interesting choice when you are the athletic director at Notre Dame and you're an Under Armour school. So. There have been reports, of course, about interest from the Chicago Bears, and there's also the unrest at Freeman's alma mater at Ohio State. So question was asked, does this new contract stipulate any out clauses for either the NFL or Ohio State? Now, I should say he's going to answer this question, but it's going to take him a little bit to get there. So kind of strap in here for a little bit. You're going to hear a lot before he directly answers that.
Yeah, thrilled about the new agreement with Marcus. Obviously, we all think the world of him. The job he has done here, at Notre Dame, on the field and off the field. You think about the improvement year in and year out, now in his third year. If you were in my position, just to see the way he interacts with our student athletes, it's just amazing, the bond that he has created with him, the way they can relate to him, the way he relates to them, and then what he does off the field at Notre Dame. I've said to so many people, the two most visible representatives of Notre Dame are our president and our head football coach. And, obviously Father Bob and everything he's accomplished, but when you think about Coach Freeman, there's no better representative of Notre Dame. He's so authentic, so sincere. He everything that makes Notre Dame different and special, and some would say maybe harder, he embraces and uses that as an advantage and as a differentiator. So for me, and in the conversations I had with Father Bob and John Viemeyer, the chair of our board of trustees, it was easy. And to Marcus's credit, every conversation I had with him about the future and his future here, it was never about him. It was always about the program. It was always about his assistant coaches, making sure that we would have the resources to keep and to attract the very best assistant coaches in the country. And you think about the team that he has assembled, it's just a wonderful team, and the culture that he has created with the student athletes, with the coaching staff, it's special. I think we have a ton of momentum, and I know it's a long-winded answer to your question. The question is no, there are no carve-outs specific to either of those that you mentioned, the NFL or any other colleges.
And that was the question that was asked. Are there any out clauses for the NFL or Ohio State? And like I said, it took him a little bit to get there, but in the final, 8 seconds or so, he answered that. And, so from that aspect, Jesse, like Corey says, he doesn't see Marcus Freeman going to Ohio State anytime soon. I mean, so now when you look at the fact that he signed this extension that's going to run him through 2030, that there is still some volatility going on at Ohio State. And as Pete Bevacqua just said, there are no out clauses, for either NFL or Ohio State stipulations. I mean, he's staying put. It's off the table now. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's off the table.
Area here?
No, I don't think there's any gray area. And to be honest with you, I'm still a firm believer that Marcus Freeman is completely content with where he's at Notre Dame. I don't think let me put it like this. I think he is at one of the top 5 brand programs in the country, right? Like when you think of college sports and college football, he's in one of the top 5 programs essentially, right? And then from there, I think the aspects or the pillars that are important to him are religion. I don't think you're getting much of that at Ohio State. And I think education,
as I've
is
said
also,
before, you can still go to church in Columbus, but like whether it's tied to the school or not. But
right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is
yeah.
the ties to the school. I think education matters, right? What you can do with a Notre Dame degree, and then football matters. And so I think when you combine the resources that he has in terms of, facilities, national brand, top 5 program,
building new facilities,
the attractiveness to assistants, how important religion is to him, how important education is.
I thought it was, I don't know that it was necessarily a shot, but at the same time, you heard Bevacqua say he embraces the things that make Notre Dame harder, like who is always complaining about,
he looks at those things not as excuses, but kind of things where I'm like, all right, well, he has a point to prove that that's not an excuse for him. And so
choose harder is one of his mantras.
Exactly. I just think when you combine all of that together, I just think that he's, and I take the NFL off the table. I don't think he's an NFL guy. And I've said it before. He said it before in interviews.
He loves it in one of those. I think it was the Out of Pocket podcast last week. Like he likes working with young people and he relates to young people like you get in college. I think those relationships are a ton different in the NFL. And again, I'm going to get off topic here a little bit, but all these NFL people, man, who are beating the drum for Bill Belichick and, these NFL people see zero possibility of Bill Belichick failing at North Carolina because he's the great, personnel guy and he's the great scheme guy and everything else, completely ignoring the whole relationship factor, which, especially now that he is the age that he is at, and I know people keep talking about he's got a 24-year-old girlfriend, trust me, that has as much to do with the amount of money that he has in his bank account as anything else, like fame and money are quite the aphrodisiac. So, that's not going to matter to a college football player because, Bill Belichick, ain't going to be going out and, throwing his own money at any of these players. But, flipping it back to Marcus Freeman, 2 completely different things when it comes to being able to relate to and communicate with young college football players.
Right. And so when you take NFL off the table, what college program can really deliver a better package than Notre Dame? If we're being honest, right? Let's put down all bias aside. For the things that matter to Marcus Freeman and what Notre Dame is in terms of a national brand, who can put together a better package than Notre Dame?
Yeah. Nobody.
And so I think that's why he's perfectly happy where he's at. That's why he signed the extension. That's why Notre Dame knew that they needed to get him done, is because imagine him walking off and going somewhere else and potentially having a national championship somewhere else. I just don't think Notre Dame and its fans could stomach that. And so I think it was just the perfect scenario. Both sides knew that that's what they wanted long term. So let's get this thing done and over with.
Let me ask you this, because one of the things that Pete Bevacqua said, 2 of the most visible representatives of Notre Dame are the football coach and the president. Do you agree with that?
You would have to. When you think of
really like the president, I would say the quarterback, the head coach, and probably the athletic director would be my top 3.
Yeah, I guess so. I got
no offense to Father Bob, but we've got a lot more, we've got a lot more visuals on definitely Marcus Freeman and Riley Leonard and Pete Bevacqua than Father Bob, I would have to say.
I think this is kind of one of those.
The rest of the world, to the academic, right, side and that whole thing, there's a difference. But
you got to think of the international as well, the religion aspect of things internationally. So I think we look at it on a micro level because of the sports situation, but I think more on a macro, if you pulled it out and asked people who didn't know about Notre Dame like sports what they thought, I think that's where kind of the president stuff kind of comes in, education, religion, all of that stuff. So
I agree. Okay, so final thought from Pete Bevacqua on the reporting on Freeman's contract that has indicated there's going to be an increased pool of money for the salary of assistant coaches.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, the conversations I had with Marcus were never about Marcus. It was always about his staff, which tells you a lot about him. The good news is we have been incredibly competitive with his staff, and it wasn't a question of catching up because we're there. It's more a question of, hey, do I have your commitment, me, Pete, to stay there and to respond to changes in the marketplace? And I said, yes, 100%. I don't think it's any secret that we're keeping our foot on the gas. When you think about Marcus's extension, when you think about the assistant coaches that we have, when you think about the fact that if you go outside, you see the Shields Family Hall emerging from the ground, Notre Dame football is a priority, and winning national championships is a priority. And I would tell you, I said this to Marcus, and we were laughing. We're both kind of maniacally obsessed with winning a national championship and more in football.
Maniacally obsessed with winning a national championship and more. That's what I didn't think about it at the time, but what is the and more? Like, what more is there than when it comes to college football than winning championships? I guess, maybe the and more is, being the next Nick Saban. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I took away from that bit and kind of just everything that Pete Bevacqua has said is, and as a fan myself, I think this is something we should all be excited about. It's a new era in terms of athletic director at Notre Dame, and he's not afraid to shell out the money. He's coming with his money bags, and he wants to win football, and he knows that this program hasn't won a national championship since 1988. Like, it is, when you think of Notre Dame, you think of football and their lack of success in the last 3 decades, essentially, right? And so what is Pete Bevacqua saying? He's saying, well, I'm going to bring the money, I'm going to bring the coaches, and I'm going to give you the resources that you need. It's not enough just to be Marcus Freeman, a great head coach. You need money to pay the Mickens, the Al Goldens, the Mike Denbrocks. It's the whole picture. And so to have Pete Bevacqua on board and saying, I'm committed to you and what you need, and money's not an issue, I think that's very refreshing. And as a fan, it's something you should feel very good about.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of, not in a negative way, but there just hasn't been that much staff continuity so far. I mean, 3 seasons for Marcus Freeman with a different offensive coordinator every year. And, you've lost you lost a special teams coordinator a couple of years ago. You've lost, you had to replace, position coaches, obviously, on each side of the ball. So, some of that, just has to do with, what's a bigger picture kind of issue right now, like losing O'Leary to the NFL, losing Mason to the NFL. There's a lot less that comes with coaching in the NFL than going out and recruiting and, taking care of young kids, on the daily and all that kind of stuff. But having more resources, like we were talking about it yesterday, Dylan McCullough interviewing for the Ohio University head coaching job. Well, reportedly around $700,000 is what the last guy was making, so like, I would think that based on what Dylan, unless Dylan just really wanted to be a head coach right now, I would think that it would take more than that to get him to leave Notre Dame to go be the head coach at Ohio University. Like I like this sends just a good message that they're not just going to be satisfied and make guys settle, for whatever the paycheck happens to be. They're going to pay them very competitively. And like, when you look at the fact that Al Golden and Mike Denbrock are both making up around $2 million a year, I think that sends a pretty good message right there. All right. Speaking of Denbrock, here's what he had to say when he was asked about how the team and the coaching staff reacted after the announcement of Marcus Freeman's contract extension. Denbrock spoke yesterday after practice. Now, remember, yesterday was Monday, but the way they have set this up, because the game is Friday, Monday was essentially a regular Tuesday. Like if this was a regular game week and the game was on Saturday. So like today is actually Wednesday for the football team, because you've got a game a day earlier. So just saying that because it'll factor into what you're going to hear in this quote. Quote, "I'll be 100% honest with you. I think today, led by the leadership of Marcus Freeman, was what we call around here Bloody Tuesday. We went back to work and dug in, and that's the way I know he wants it to be and wants the focus to be on the players and what we've got to get done and accomplished as a football team to achieve team glory on Friday," end quote. And Jesse, that is blank.
To me, that is a reassuring message, and the message that Marcus Freeman has always said. It's all about the team and team glory. And I think basically what Mike Denbrock alluded to is, we saw what happened to Marcus Freeman, and I think that only makes us hungrier or more excited, right? Like that just means that this thing is even more locked in, right? And so, yes, Marcus Freeman got rewarded, but at the end of the day, all these guys are celebrating by working harder, by continuing to push that needle and work together as a team. Because I'm sure, like Marcus Freeman has said, like as he's probably addressed the team and said, these things aren't accomplished without you guys, right? Like I don't accomplish these things without the work of you guys. And I think that's what Mike Denbrock was alluding to, is this actually kind of fires the guys up because it's about team glory, right? Like Marcus Freeman got his piece of the pie because of how hard the players worked and what they were able to accomplish. And so what are they going to do? They're just going to go back to work harder. They're going to put that construction hat back on, and they're going to keep digging, and they're going to keep working harder. And so to me, it goes back to the whole team glory aspect.
No, that's a good call. And I just love the Bloody Tuesday in there, because like what that says is like Tuesday is your physical day and you're getting after it on Tuesday. And I think, some people kind of cringed a little bit, about I want them to bring the violence, when they were playing Army and stuff like that. It's like football is a physical sport. It is a violent sport. And the fact that they're getting after it and they call it Bloody Tuesday, they're getting after it on Tuesday. They're not out there celebrating because the head coach, got
they're working harder.
They're out there going at it even harder and pounding even harder because it's Bloody Tuesday. And they know that they've got a big game that's going to be a physical game coming up Friday night as well. So I love it. I think you're thinking about Sunday, Bloody Sunday, Rabid Nile, Chihuahua, Bloody Sunday. I believe like that was the U2 song. Anyway, if that's what you're thinking about. But yeah, he says, wait, it's not Ireland, it's in Alabama. All right. So comment here from defensive coordinator Al Golden as well. He was asked about the value of playing against USC's passing game before Indiana. Quote, "There's some things that apply, but the contrast of going from Army to USC, I needed to do a better job of getting the guys and putting them in better position. I didn't do that. They fought their bleeps off. They gave us everything they could. They made plays when they needed to at the end. The things that apply, meaning the things that we're going to call in this game, we have to execute better. Then the things that we're throwing out, we're not worried about it. We're plotting a course for Indiana for the last 2 weeks now," end quote from Al Golden. So do you buy or sell that? Going from Army to USC from 1 week to the next, having the impact in that USC game?
Yeah, I do think that it does have an impact because you go from a very in the trenches, warlike environment, right? It's like 80%, not even like 90% run, 10% pass, very physical, very commanding the line of scrimmage, controlling the trenches, good tackling, closing space, et cetera, Then you flip it to USC, whose running back gets hurt in the first quarter, and it becomes this completely air raid. Like, that's a complete difference going from one team who like barely passes to a team that's literally trying to air raid you out over the top the entire rest of the game. And so I like what Al Golden said in that situation. And obviously, you know, they talked about the players needed a break. There's also the physical toll that playing a triple option team has, you know, on the body as well. And so again, to prepare yourself up for this physical, you know, in the trenches run game, to go to a completely different kind of air raid, we're really spreading things out. That's the contrast that Al Golden is talking about. And I'll even, you know, double down on that a little bit as well when he said, you know, there's some things that apply, and really there isn't many things that apply, because USC is an air raid offense, and IU is going to run this spread option, you know, very quick perimeter, quick passes. Like it's completely the opposite. And I would say that IU's, you know, the mentality you need kind of plays back more so to Army, and that's physical in the trenches, good sound tackling, violent tackling, gang tackling, covering space. Like that's, I would say there's more similarity between Army and IU than there is Army and USC. And so to go from, you know, one extreme of Army to USC being the completely opposite side of the extreme, and now coming back down to maybe a more middle ground, I think that's the balance that Al Golden has been juggling these last couple of weeks.
Yes. By the way, we're going to talk about uniforms in a minute, since everyone is infatuated with what uniform they're going to wear Friday night. Okay, so it's coming up. It's coming. Chill. It's coming. I'm not going to add a whole lot to that, you know, because there is like when you're playing that option, there is a little bit of hesitancy out there as a defensive back. Sometimes, you know, like, you know, are you peeking in the backfield? You know, like where are your eyes? Where's your head? And there was definitely some hesitancy that you could see when they were playing USC again against like a much different kind of athlete, both from a size standpoint, you know, a speed standpoint, the whole thing, going from Army to USC, and hadn't really considered it at the time. Xavier Watts talked about this week as well, you know, that was a factor. So it was interesting. And I guess we'll just, you know, kind of see how much they have turned the page, because they have known for a couple of weeks now the kind of offense that they're going to be facing. And again, it's going to be different. Like, just because USC passes well does not mean that it is, you know, anything like, you know, like USC and Indiana are not similar, you know, like in terms of athleticism, in terms of who they have at quarterback, with any of that stuff. And speaking of which, Adam posted this one early. What's going on with SC? 3 of the 4 receivers killed Notre Dame are in the portal. The Branch brothers, Zachariah and Zion, hit the portal today. They are leaving now. They're heading out the door out there in Los Angeles. Brian also wanted to know if Jagasaw is going to be dressing. I wouldn't look for him to dress this week. I mean, as far as we know, he's had 1 practice, you know, maybe 2, you know, with today. I wouldn't be looking for him to add any kind of depth right now. You know, for him, it's more like Vince and I were talking yesterday. This is more about like a guy who missed the entire season, obviously, with injury. And I'm sure that, you know, because it was a pec/shoulder injury that he had, you know, like he's not going to have anywhere close to, you know, he's not going to be anywhere close to full strength in terms of upper body and stuff like that, you know. So I think for him, it's more just the fact that he's getting in practice time this month, you know, during the prep for these games. So I wouldn't be looking for Jagasaw to be a contributor, at least right now. Like, win a couple games, who knows what could happen down the road. Then Herrick says, weather suggesting a run-heavy game. We excited about this? He is. I think you should all be excited.
Can I give you my Notre Dame offense keys to the game, or is that a Thursday discussion?
Bring it.
I think Notre Dame has to attack on the outside veer, old school veer kind of option.
Old school veer. Okay.
And I think Riley Leonard needs to attack the perimeter as well. He just needs to break a few, right, in order to kind of – that's what's going to break IU's defenses and get into that situation that we were talking about of do they bring an extra guy down in the box. So I think inside you're not going to – they're going to run inside, but if you can break it to the outside and get to the second level, that's where you're gonna like. IU's defense is great. Their defensive line is great. Their edge guys, their tackles, their nose, they're great up front. Can you get to the outside on some old school veer? Can you get Riley Leonard on the perimeter? And when you're not running the ball, what can you do with your wide receivers and tight ends over the middle of the field? And I really think that's what it boils down to.
Do you think there's a greater chance of Notre Dame doing that or two backs on the field? They haven't really done.
I think they go to two backs if they don't have an answer for IU. But if their usual stuff is working, I don't see them just busting out two backs for the heck of it.
Do you think that they would actually, be, like little veer block, that outside veer?
I do. I think that's what you got to do. You got to get those edge guys to overcommit, and that's what the veer is made for. Guys who are hungry to bring pressure.
Yeah, like if you want to be aggressive off the edge, just go
veer right at it.
Yeah,
and I think they've got the backs to do it as well. Because if they can hit that veer on the edge and get to the second level, you're not catching them. I'm sorry, but you're not catching them.
Right. Exactly. Doesn't matter which back it is. That's exactly right. Interesting. Curious to see. TG3 podcast agrees with you. He's in on you.
Thank you, sir.
Can't say I disagree.
He says screens and checkdowns in the flat are good too. That's some of the stuff we whiteboarded earlier.
All right, let's just get into this. Like, people want to talk about uniforms, Jesse. A lot of talk about what uniforms they should wear Friday night. A lot of people are floating around this black jersey thing. Do you buy or sell that actually happening? Do you buy or sell Notre Dame showing up in black jerseys for their playoff game?
Sell 100%. This is still Notre Dame, a very traditionalist, modest school. I'll say this. I started to get into this earlier. They are going to either wear their typical home uniform kit or they're wearing green, and those are really the only two options. I think
so too.
They're not going to wear these black or just off-brand. Notre Dame's all about their brand at the end of the day, and they're not going to be wearing colors that take away from their brand. They're blue, gold, and green. They're not going to
not in a game that everyone's going to be watching. It's the first. It's a prime time first college football playoff game this season. They've had night games before. People are acting like this is the first night game at Notre Dame Stadium or something.
So with them going gold towels, I believe I'm 100% they're just going to wear their standard home uniforms, blue tops, gold pants. If they would have gave you a green towel, I would have said this is a green out. They would have wore their green uniforms. But to me, the gold towel was a very, very pointed indicator that they're not wearing black. They're not wearing green. They're going to wear their gold pants and blue tops, and that's going to be it.
I would think that they'll let like the captains and or seniors vote on, what jersey they're going to wear. But I can't see making black an option either.
It's just not their brand.
Yeah, that's right. That to me is a Shamrock Series game. It's not a home game uniform. Brandon says, why gold and black?
Everyone's getting caught up on this video.
Like what's wrong with gold cleats? Like what?
Well, who's to say? I struggle with black and dark blue. Who's to say it wasn't just like the lighting of the video where that black looks like a dark blue? I don't know. Someone just commented in the chat. I thought it was green towels, so I think it's a time for you to wave. Give us
no. The towels are not green.
Peek.
This is the towel. This is the towel that was in the video today, and they gave us one after Pete Bevacqua's press conference today. And you can kind of see. Let me see. Like you see up there where it's got like the bracket: number 7 Notre Dame, number 10 Indiana. Cool. Get Loud, the stadium. These are gold towels. They're gold. Personally, I wouldn't mind if they wore green, but I can completely understand if they just go classic uniform. Like I've heard people say that they need to wear actual gold pants instead of the mustard pants. I would not disagree with that. Like those are the kind of pants that the 1988 team wore, actual gold pants. So I would go with that. What do you want them to wear? Like you've said what you think that they will wear. What do you want them to wear? Like if you had your choice?
I'd go green tops, gold pants.
I think so too. Good luck. Someone posted a suggestion that Notre Dame wear all green and Indiana wear all red
That
for a
would be
Christmas
cool.
theme. Now, the problem with that, because I've seen teams do it before, I'm not colorblind, but apparently that is like torture. Like if you're colorblind, you can't tell the difference between the two on the screen. So people would be confused all night if they're colorblind.
I've just seen that because of how close we are to Christmas and it's kicking off. Everyone's like, both teams should just wear their alternates, green and red. You know, like this is a Christmas. I wouldn't be mad about the look. Let's be honest, but I think they got to go green tops, gold pants, gold helmets, and I think that would look very sharp.
I'm in on it. I think that would look really sharp. And they've worn some different color combinations this year. They've worn green at home already with the white pants. They wore the blue jerseys with the white pants at Georgia Tech, and they obviously went all white against USC. So this would be another color combination. Green with gold, I think, would look really good.
I love the people I'm not trying to be mean here, but like black, I promise you, is not an option. It is not. Like they are not. Notre Dame of all schools is not coming out and wearing black. This isn't Oregon. They're not repped up with Nike where they get a new uniform every week.
Didn't it start? Was it like last week? There was like a blackout or something like that.
Someone posted a fake uniform, and then that video with the cleats came out, and now it's like all everyone is talking about.
Right.
And then last night there was
black ain't happening. Black
is not happening. And then last night someone posted that they commented on Xavier Watts's like Instagram or something and said like what jerseys, and someone thinks like Xavier Watts's brother or cousin responded and said they're wearing green, something like it's crazy that like this entire show, what has everyone been waiting on? Uniforms. This entire week, What is the most polarizing thing? What uniforms they're wearing? It's like, I don't care. They could come out in the ugliest uniforms, but if they win, I don't give a damn what they wear.
Exactly. Schools. There was pushback from the old schools when they wore the white pants against Georgia Tech. People were, there were people mad about that. People were mad about the all whites against USC. You're never going to please everybody, no matter what they do, unless they just come out in the classic uniform. And even when they do that, you're going to make some people mad because they were hoping they were going to wear black jerseys or something. There is zero chance, as much as we give Vince a hard time for his absolutisms, there is zero chance they're wearing black jerseys in a playoff game at Notre Dame Stadium. Like that is so off brand. There's just no way that's going to happen. No way.
I'll give you a Vince one. I'll do a birthday suit lap if they come out in black.
You will do the actual birthday suit lap if they come out in black. Can we video that?
I'll have Naomi video it.
Father David says that I just guaranteed that they're going to wear black, and USMA says absolutism will get.
I liked USMA's comment. Uniforms are a good distressor. And that's a good point. With how stressful this week is, it is nice to think about the little stuff about like what uniforms they're ultimately going to be wearing.
Yes. Rally towel. This is the rally towel. It is not a green towel. It's a yellow towel.
Oh, man. And you know what the crazy part is we probably won't know until like 3 hours before kickoff.
Right. If that. I'll be curious to see, like what do they come out in? What are they warming up in?
Are they going to do the weeks before where like they've come out in one thing and then changed in the locker room?
There's no way they would do that before a playoff game though. Because I think
then you get too much talk about it. Everyone loves to blame losses on jerseys rather than like what actually happened.
Exactly. And that's why you don't wear black jerseys in a playoff. That's one of the many reasons you don't wear black jerseys in a playoff game. Indy Forever 72. So you're saying there's a chance that there will be two backs.
We can only hope.
I think you're going to see two backs, at least some. How much it happens, I don't know, but there'll be two backs on the field at
Oh.
some point Friday night.
Could you imagine though, like coming out in two backs, motioning out Love into the slot, you fake a handoff to Price, you hit Love in the flat, like it's all there. I guess I would love to just like, and this is just the football side of me. I would love to just sit down and talk to Denbrock and just be like, what are your thoughts? Like, what's holding you back on this two back stuff? Like, why do you see it as being negative? Is it something you don't know enough about schematically? Is it something you're saving maybe further down the road in the playoff? Do you not trust? Do you think that the reason why you're so effective is that you rest your backs, and so more two backs means more usage essentially? Because, I mean, we saw two backs with Ford and Aeneas Williams at some point this season, but we've never seen like a Love and Price two back set. So it's just
that was the thing.
I would love to ask, like, what is it? Like, what is the holdup here with two back?
Because remember last year when they were doing some two back stuff, Devin Ford was part of that package. So it wasn't even like the 2A guys.
Right.
It was.
So they're trying to keep guys fresh by putting in two backs when they do go two backs.
Right. But there's no real threat of Devin Ford doing anything.
Right. When you see Ford and Aeneas come out, I'm not scared defensively.
Right.
Compared to if it was Love and Price on the field at the same time.
Price, Love, and Riley Leonard in the backfield scares the hell out of
all guys over 500 rushing yards, all guys that have like almost 10 rushing touchdowns. Like, come on. That last comment about Irish Eagle 83 is pretty funny.
Show me a buffet and I'll show you a big back.
That's the line of big backs.
All right. Well, I'm sure we didn't clear anything up in terms of what uniforms they're wearing Friday night. Obviously,
we just gave our expert opinions.
Yeah. If you want to call it expert. What time do you think you're going to be out there in the parking lot tailgating Friday?
So we've talked about this. Do we want to get a proper meal in us? Maybe have a couple drinks before we're out in the cold all day. But I will say my feet will be planted on that pavement no later than 3 p.m. on Friday.
Oh, wow. You're going to be out there 5 hours early, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. You want that proper meal, I think you need to just head over to the Knights of Columbus and get those steak sandwiches. I think that's the way to go.
I think game day is also factored into how early I want to get there. I want to see some of that stuff. So
I've heard, this didn't come up today, but I have heard that like they might not open up the lots until like after like 12 o'clock on Friday, because it is a work day and, like everyone's working and,
well,
like
I've heard
employees are working and the whole thing. So.
I've got a buddy who works on the Holy Cross campus, and I know it's different, but it's still kind of that tri-campus area. And it sounds like they're kind of shutting it down for the day. Like they actually want people to like just go be a part of the game atmosphere.
Take it as a game day holiday kind
basically
of thing.
Like it's like he was like, I don't even have to take off PTO because it's just kind of understood. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so and that's how it should be. I mean, the whole city of South Bend should be like shut down on Friday. You should have one job, and that's to either be at the game, tailgating for the game, and then finding a seat to watch the game.
You have one job. Be at the game. Be at the tailgate, whichever it happens to be. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. Good stuff in the chat. As always, good stuff, Jesse, on the whiteboard. As always, and a lot of other good stuff in between. That's going to do it for tonight. Please do hit that like button if you would, and of course rate and subscribe and all that good stuff on the podcast platforms as well. We've got 2 more shows coming up this week, and of course Brian's got his shows as well. We've got a lot still to come leading up to Notre Dame and Indiana Friday night at Notre Dame Stadium, first ever on campus college football playoff game. We will be there, and we will be here the next 2 nights at 5 o'clock as well. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.